Facing cancer doesn't mean you are now only the cancer patient. So often we hear those with cancer share the need to feel seen, to feel understood, and not feel alone. So whether you are facing cancer yourself or supporting someone who is, join us. My name is Susan Larkin. We are Facing Cancer Together. Often a personal cancer experience can highlight gaps in the system. For Audrey Guth, it led her to helping moms facing cancer and helping their children. Join Audrey and our special guests as we talk about how to talk to kids about cancer. Let's hear from Melanie McDonough.
So it was kind of all organic. My older daughter's was 9 at the time, and my younger, 9 and 7, I believe. And yeah, it all kind of happened organically, where I got the diagnosis and it was on a Friday at 4 p.m. And I had proactively booked an appointment with my doctor because I had the biopsy, because it was COVID. It was a phone call appointment. So when the doctor came onto the line, she said, okay, what are we discussing today? I said, well, I went for a breast cancer biopsy. Did you get the results? And she put me on hold, and it felt like a long time. So then I got more nervous, and then she looked at it and then told me, yes, we got the results and it is cancer. And I was stunned. And then my husband was also shocked. And we're like, okay, what do we do? Right? Because my mom and sister went and picked up the kids from school at the time, and they were hanging out in the basement. We're like, just keep them busy while we have this appointment, kind of thing. So when the doctor said it was cancer, we were shaken up and then emotional. So we're kind of like, what do we do here? What are our next steps? And then Cam said, my husband said, the girls are home. I can't not be emotional or upset. I might cry and things this weekend. We can't not tell them. And I really wanted to not tell them until we had next steps or kind of a game plan, or at least kind of know where we were at with the cancer, because the doctor said we have to send you for tests to see if it's spread. So we had a little discussion, and he was like, I can't not be emotional. And I was like, okay. He said, I don't want them to find out from somebody else or overhearing, if I told family members. And he's like, I don't want them to worry all weekend about why is dad crying or upset, because he doesn't really do that too often. So then I agreed with him, but I said I would like to tell them, instead of him. So then I went and grabbed the girls from the basement and brought them to the main floor, and we sat in our great room. And I just said, mom's been going for some tests and whatnot lately, and we got some information back. And they said, okay. And then I said, we found out I have breast cancer. And my husband's crying at the time, and then my kids start crying. And I'm trying to make them not worry, but also emotional. And they had some questions of what does that mean? And probably some ideas about cancer, just like we do, of, cancer means hugging a toilet seat, or, from social media and movies. So I think it scared them. They have their ideas of cancer. And I had to tell them, I don't really know. And that was the hardest part of, mom has breast cancer and I don't really know. And so we all kind of sat there and cried, and I couldn't answer any of their questions. I just had to tell them I have to go for more tests, and then we'll figure it out and we'll have a game plan. I do think that was the best decision for our family, especially looking back, because we were honest and upfront from that moment, from that day. And as appointments came up or things were coming up of my treatments, such as surgery, radiation, those little in-between appointments, we were forthcoming. And then we would have some discussions here and there. And I would just kind of check in hey, I had this appointment. This is what they said. Do you have any questions? How are you feeling about mom going through this? And I think that went really well because sometimes at bedtime, they would ask me too, like, oh, okay, so you have your surgery. What does that mean? Like, how are you feeling? And, we would sometimes just bawl and like cry. And like, I don't know, I am nervous. And they're like, I'm nervous for you too. And we would kind of just cry in bed a little bit. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to be okay. And, we're going to get through this. So we had to have those tough conversations, but there wasn't ever them questioning us of, is that true? Or, they just trusted, and that made it easier because we were forthcoming and they were trusting. So I don't think they worried as much. I think they were, as weird as it sounds, like at a pretty good age, that they weren't, Googling things on their own or too young where they would need, like my husband would need extra help with, like if we had toddlers, right? That would be really hard too, I think.
Oh, those sound like nice snuggles. What, when you did lose your hair, how did they react to that?
So yeah, we did it in steps. I'm like a steps or a list person. So we had talked about my hair would fall out. So I have a niece who was 24 at the time. So I asked her to come. I had really long, like ringlet hair, like down to halfway down my back. So I had asked her to come closer to when I start chemo and just cut my hair super short, like just buzz the side and the back and just leave a little bit of length on top. Yeah. So that was kind of step one. I think my girls saw it in phases too, so it was okay. Once I was getting chemo, by the second treatment, when I was showering, it actually started to fall out, like in the shower. So my husband, I got him to like just buzz the rest off. Me being bald was like, we would even joke about it with the girls, but I wanted them to learn a lesson too that, looks aren't everything. They're a big part of confidence and whatnot, but they're not everything. So we would joke, like we were cleaning up the washroom and there's like a hair tie or something on the floor. And I was like, oh, whose hair tie? And they're like, not mine, both of them. And I'm like, well, it's not mine. And we started laughing. So just to have like a little bit of humor about it too is, yeah.
Here's Maureen Holloway.
What I didn't realize was the massive impact it had on my kids. We told them I was going to be okay, but they know when you say we're going to be okay. And then they did find out later, you didn't know you were going to be okay. And I was like, well, what were we going to tell you? You were 12 and 6. But anyway, they were fine while I went through treatment. It was a year later. My eldest especially was slammed into profound anxiety, which is not easy being 12, 13.
And now Jules Wish.
I think like with Otis, he wasn't even 2 at the time that I was diagnosed, and he's 3.5 now. And like some people have kind of asked before, like, oh, does Otis know? And I'm like, well, no, he doesn't know, because I don't think that he will understand, or of course he wouldn't understand. But he knows like times, like, for example, in April, when I had a bad reaction to a clinical trial, I ended up in the hospital for about 6 days. And like, he knew that I was at the hospital and that I was like sick. And so he knows that when I'm not feeling well or I have like appointments, we're honest about that. We haven't necessarily used the word cancer. It's not because we're hiding it in any way. It's just like, we want to wait till he's at an age where he understands what it is. And I think like, he finds his way to support me in his own way, which is really cute. He like, if I was feeling rough from chemo or something like that, he'll, take care of me and make sure everything's okay.
And now let's hear my conversation with Audrey Guth. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us today. Do you want to let folks know who you are and the organization that you founded?
Sure. Sue, thank you so much for inviting me. I always love having an opportunity to share my life's passion and the privilege that I have in supporting people who are going through a cancer journey. So my name is Audrey Guth. I'm the founder of Nankind, and we're an organization that truly understands the cancer experience for young parents who have children.
That's great. And we know, from your work with Nankind, how important it is to think about conversations with kids when we're going to talk to them about cancer. When you're working with your volunteers who are specially trained, with your child life specialists, what are those common questions or concerns that parents have around those conversations?
Well, actually, so I can speak to you as a parent, but I'd also like to speak to you from a child's perspective, because I truly have lived experience. When I was 9, my father was diagnosed with cancer, and it was a big secret. My parents didn't talk to us. It was just the secret in the household. And one day I was walking down the hall in school, because I'm a third grader, and I overhear 2 teachers saying, "Oh, did you hear about Mr. Belford? He has cancer." And that was how I found out about one of my parents being so ill. But it wasn't safe to talk about it, because I knew that they were trying to keep it a secret, and I didn't want to upset them. So here you are growing up in a situation where it's a secret, and do I trust the information that they're giving me to be true? So we fast forward many years. I'm now, of course, an adult. I have my own children, and I'm diagnosed with cancer. Now, what happens? I fall back in the same patterns of what I knew to be true. I want to protect my children from the hard stuff, right? That's what we know. That's what we fall back on. And that's true today.
And so, Audrey, so thinking back to, if you were able to talk to your parents or talk to Audrey, however many years ago, facing that diagnosis, what would you say now after all this experience in this space of supporting children whose parents have cancer? What do you wish they all knew then and you knew then?
What I wish I knew, especially now, having had cancer and having children that have a parent with cancer, I didn't realize how scared they were too. And that awareness, even though it wasn't spoken in our household, and I was trying to protect them from the hard stuff, based on what I know now and what I've learned, is that kids as young as even 18 months know that something is different, that this is not our normal. And kids as young as 18 months experience grief. Grief is loss of normalcy. It's not just death and dying. It's something in my life has changed. And kids who have a parent who have cancer, nothing is normal anymore. They can't go to their programs because their parent is too sick to take them. They may not be able to afford to do the things that they used to do or get the things that they used to have because the parent can't work anymore. It's just as simple as having a parent with a mastectomy, a mom with a mastectomy, and she can't hug her child. So how do we handle that? How do we deal with that? What do we say to our kids? Really is age dependent, right? Yeah. Because it depends on if you're talking to a 3 or 4-year-old or you're talking to a young teen. There are 4 questions that every child of a parent with cancer has. Did I cause it? We have in our organization, kids will often tell us that they think they caused their mom's cancer because they didn't clean their room and she was yelling at them and was upset.
Wow. And what about the other 3 questions? You mentioned there were 4.
Sure. Kids have magical thinking. When they don't get the answers that they need to the questions that they have in their head, they have something called magical thinking, and they make up stories, and the stories are so much worse than reality. So it's really important that we answer their questions, and they have to know that it's safe to ask those questions. So one of the questions that a kid might ask is, did I cause my mom's cancer? Stories that we've heard from children that we support, I didn't clean my room and my mom was yelling at me, so that's why she got sick.
Yep. And what are some of those other kind of common things that kids might be thinking in this magical thinking?
So another one is, can I catch it? And when children have gone through something like a pandemic and COVID, where everybody's wearing masks and nobody can come into their house, they're going to process this as the same thing as COVID. So we have to assure them that you can't catch cancer. The cancer is something that happens inside your body, and it's not something that you caught from somebody else. Another one is, who's going to take care of me? Who's going to take care of me? And we have to reassure kids that, there are a lot of people who love you in your life. Just let's talk about all the people. Give me some names of people that you think really love you and will take care of you. And another one is, can I cure it? Can I cure it? And kids want these superpowers. They think that they can fix things. And we have to let them know that the doctors are doing the best that they can, and they're using really great medicine to be able to help mommy get better. And another one, a really tough one, and you really have to be careful with this one, is my mommy gonna die? And it's really hard, when they ask you that question. And, the way that you answer them is, everything, every living thing on this planet will die. You remember the bird that we saw on the side of the road? Everything dies. But it's a mystery as to when that's going to happen for anybody and everything. And then you reiterate, the doctors are doing everything they can, giving us really great medicine and really great treatment. And hopefully that won't happen. But we never know. It's a mystery. And that's how you can answer that question.
That is a great answer. Talk about, you were mentioning kids as young as 18 months or 2 years old, knowing that something's off with the schedule. And I appreciate this is kind of a bit broad, but, if you think of those different age groups, whether it's, preschool, early grades, high school, kind of how do you gauge the level of detail, the words you might use, depending on the age or even the emotional kind of level of those children?
Well, I'm not a child life specialist. I'm only speaking as a mom and as someone who has been a part of this organization for 14 years. And I've learned a lot from our child life specialists. But from what I've learned is that kids will give you cues and they will only absorb what they can handle. There are ways in which you can give them information at their level. And one of the things that's very interesting that the child life specialists do, they use Play-Doh a lot, and they make round circles and show and bunch round circles together and explain that cancer is a bunch of cells that stick together. And that may be something that you do at a preschool, very young child level. And then there's a teddy bear clinic using teddy bears with and explaining what's happening to their parent with the ports and all kinds of medical interventions that are happening. And that kind of brings it into their level of understanding. But kids do something called puddle jumping. Kids are not going to sit down and have a half-hour conversation with you. They're going to ask you a question, is my mom going to die? You're going to give them the answer, it's a mystery, and they're going to say, okay, can we play now? So it's not going to be this, we're going to have an hour conversation.
Yep. They want their one question answered and then they're going to move on to something else. And that was actually one of my questions is it's not a one and done conversation. Parents don't sit down, have the conversation and then just assume that's it. We've had the conversation. What are your tips for parents to kind of keep that communication open throughout somebody's treatment?
Well, I think if you start with an honest and open conversation, a child is going to feel safe asking questions. It's when you try to keep it a secret that the mistrust perpetuates. So if you have had the conversation and but also there can be too much information. You don't need to give details of everything that's happening to you all the time. It's just very basic information, keeping it open, and kids will come and they'll feel comfortable asking those questions. Sometimes some families have a jar where they can write their questions and put their questions in a jar, and then have a designated time where they answer those questions. You have to be creative. And art is a good way of stimulating conversation, of coloring and looking at a picture and asking a child what they're drawing, and then all kinds of things can come up through that. It was very funny. I want to share a conversation I had at my granddaughter's school, where it was her special parents' day. And just to give you an idea of how kids perceive, and kids are very literal, things. It was her special person's day, and her teacher said, "Can you tell your class what's special about your bubby?" And she said, "My bubby helps people who have cancer." And so the teacher said to this grade 1 class, "What do you know about cancer?" And a little boy raised his hand and said, "Terry Fox had cancer. That's when they cut off your leg and then they make you run a lot and then you die."
Oh, gosh.
So, we had a conversation about it. We talked about that you can't catch it. Not everybody who has cancer dies. There's great medicine and people get better. And we have lots of hospitals that are specially designed to treat people who have cancer. And so that was really, that really drove home.
You never know. Yeah, go ahead, Audrey.
Another story for you about how literal kids are. So my child life specialist was preparing a child for a funeral, and it was an open casket. And she said, "Melanie, you're going to go to the funeral. It's okay." So following the funeral, my child life specialist called and said, "So how did it go?" And she said, "You won't believe it. The head was there too."
They're so literal. Isn't that amazing? Audrey, when we think about kids that are a bit older, maybe tweens or teens, now we're into the danger zone where they've found Google. They know the internet. How do you talk to kids about, first thing they're doing, going online and researching whatever type of cancer their parent might have? What are some of the tips that your child life workers will say to those kids or to those parents that are in that Google search engine age bracket?
Well, even as cancer patients, we're told not to Google because it's really scary. I think the best thing to do is to say to kids that there's a lot of information, and a lot of information on the internet is not true, and that we have to trust the physicians that are taking care of us, because they're the best in the world, and we have to have our faith and our trust in the medical professionals that are making the right decisions for our particular cancer. And everyone is different, and some people may be sensitive to a certain treatment and others another treatment, but we're very lucky that we have access to the most incredible medical care in the world.
Yeah. And I often wonder, you take time as a parent to sit down and have the conversations. You're being open. You're answering questions truthfully. You've practiced this mystery response around, what about death? And then to your own personal story, that child goes to school. That child goes to visit a well-meaning grandparent or family member, and they give contradictory information or they respond differently. Do you recommend, should parents kind of share with their network how they're describing this or how they're talking about it? How do you balance your conversations with these external things they might hear or overhear?
Well, I would recommend that they share it with the teachers in the school, because children will often have behavior issues as a result of what's happening at home. And in our experience in our organization, Cancer puts such a stress on the family. The family is really in crisis. Many times a marriage falls apart as a result of a cancer diagnosis and treatment. And a teacher should be aware that this is what's going on at home, because a kid may start exhibiting poor behavior, or their grades may slip. And so without that understanding, it's really hard for a teacher to support that child. It's really hard. People are so well-meaning, but they say really stupid things sometimes. Saying, my friend's father had cancer and this is what happened and they died, or whatever, is not very helpful. But it's really hard to control what happens outside. I would just, whoever is in that child's life, if they have a child care provider, a nanny, a teacher, someone that's spending a lot of time with them, should absolutely be aware of what's happening in the household. Nothing is normal. Things change overnight. I remember Mom saying to me, we haven't been outside in weeks because I don't have the energy to put the snowsuit on or to put my child's boots on. Like, there's nothing normal.
Yeah.
So anyone that has that direct interaction, I can share with you some things as we're talking about things that people say that impact children in a really big way. And if anybody takes anything away from this conversation, I would hope that it would be this. At a funeral, wake, or Shiva, if you are there and you're having a conversation with a child, please don't say they're in a better place. Because what that is saying to a child is that it's abandonment. Why did they leave me? Why would my mom want to leave me to go to someplace else? Was I not good enough? And it's so, and remember, kids are literal. Kids will process things. I'll share with you something somebody said to me, and I was 12. So I wasn't a little kid, but someone said to me, your dad will always be looking down on you from above. Very common thing that people say, there will be watching you. Do you know that every time I made out with a guy in high school, I had these panic attacks that he was watching me. So, you have to really be very, very careful with what you say to a child, because it sometimes becomes so much a part of their psyche that you don't realize it, and it can carry on for many, many years.
And what are some helpful things that, you're the teacher, you're maybe an aunt or someone in that child's life? What are some helpful things that you could say to that child?
Well, I would think from a parent's perspective or an adult perspective in helping that family, when you say to a cancer patient, what can I do to help you? You're giving them another job. Cancer is such a big job. It's so many appointments and it's scheduling so many things. And so when you say to me, what can I do? You're giving me a job to give you an assignment or manage you, right?
Yeah.
So don't ask, just do. Go pick the kids up, take them out for a day, walk the dog, do something, send cards, send notes, leave voicemails, thinking about you, whatever. But to really ask somebody is just to give them a job. And it also says to a mom that you can't be the mom that you want to be, so I'll fill in for you. And most moms don't want to admit that they can't be the mom that they want to be. So don't give someone a job. Just do something. One of the biggest things, and something that we started during COVID, is prepared meals. When you think about it, a lot of our kids during COVID were surviving on cereal. Yeah. Because to plan a grocery list, to go shopping, especially during COVID, or to order online was impossible. Then to carry the bags in from the car, and then or on a subway or on a bus, and then to have to prepare the meal, and then to clean up from the meal. You think it's not a big deal. It is a huge big deal. Good nutrition is so important.
Yeah.
For kids, so important. So.
fills that physical need, and it fills, there's an emotional support there too, knowing that somebody's got your back. Somebody's going to be there.
Food is love, right?
Food is love. What about, you were talking about the fact that there's a sense that you're grieving the loss of what was normal in that family. When treatment's over and the normal still is different, how do you continue to support kids? And just like adults have fear of reoccurrence and have, the anxiety and all of those points post-treatment that add to that. This isn't back to pre-cancer. It's a different normal. How do you prepare kids for that stage?
So that's really interesting because that's at the core of what we do. At the beginning, really, when I started this organization, I thought it was respite for the moms. We're going to give respite to the moms. But as we grew beyond just a few moms, and we had more moms and more moms and more cancers, we realized that we had this unique opportunity that parents were trusting us to go in at a time where nothing was normal, the family was in crisis, and we learned that kids who are exposed to a long-term illness or death of a parent before the age of 16 had a 50% higher incidence of mental health issues. So what amazing opportunity we had to be the intervention before a child became emotionally and to have emotional issues as a result of unresolved grief. So we built a program to allow kids to have those big feelings, not to take the feelings away, but to have big feelings, to share big feelings. One of the things we haven't talked about is anger. You automatically go to fear, but kids are so self-centered and they're really angry when they can't go to their hockey game, or they're really, really angry when they don't have that birthday party because their mom was too sick. I mean, it's not about the sick mom. It's about, I'm mad because I didn't get this. So how do we get them to deal with those? And we have developed all of these coping activities to teach them how do you deal with these big feelings? Or we have something called a worry monster that has big teeth, and they make their worries and they stick their worries into the worry monster, chews up the feelings. And there's so many things that we have that we use to be able to get kids to build resilience, learn coping skills and strategies so they have this toolbox. And the next time life knocks them down, they don't know how to do this. I'm going to go to my breathing exercises. We do, for little kids, we make pinwheels and we teach them how to breathe with pinwheels. They're so simple, but that's what kids need. How do I deal with these feelings instead of keeping them inside? It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. Now, how do we deal with those feelings in a productive way, not a destructive?
That's amazing. So it's about letting the kids feel what they feel.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And acknowledging it's okay.
Yeah. And as a parent, do you acknowledge, you know what? I'm angry too. I'm scared too. And that everybody's having those feelings.
Mm-hmm. And sad. And what our volunteers tell us, they walk into the house, everybody is sad. There's this feeling, this cloud of sadness. So bringing somebody into the house that has joy, that's bringing a sense of joy and normalcy, is really important.
And do you ever have kids that, I don't know if guilt is the right word, but if they go to a friend's house and they have fun and they come home and they're excited because they had a great time?
Huge guilt to just laugh and have fun. It's not okay to have fun. And we have to let them know, we can still have fun. We can still, celebrate things and be happy. It's okay to be happy. It's really common for kids to feel guilty. It's very common for kids to to be afraid to leave their mom, to want to be a caregiver. now I'm the caregiver. I have to take care of my mom because, especially in single parent households, it's very, very common.
So maybe even just saying, we're going to choose a funny movie to watch tonight as a family and laugh as a family.
Yeah.
And model that it's okay to...
It's okay.
That's wonderful. I think it's so important for parents to know that there's organizations like yours, that Nankind is there to help parents families on a one-on-one, but also some tips out there. I think some great information for parents that need to take this on and have these conversations, and all caregivers to listen and remember how literal kids can be, and this puddle jumping and the mystical thinking or magical thinking. It's amazing food for thought, really, I think, drilling down and remembering what it's like to be a kid. Is there anything you want to share, Audrey, that I haven't asked?
One of the things, we have a resource. It's how to talk to your kids about cancer. And it's available through most of the hospitals, I'm very excited to say, because they all ask us for them and they distribute them. But if you're interested, please reach out to nankind.com. You can get help, and we'd be happy to help you in any way that we can.
It's wonderful. Audrey, thank you so much for this conversation, for sharing your time and everything that you and Nankind is doing. It's phenomenal.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Sue. I really appreciate it.
What happens when someone facing cancer looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize themselves? In our next episode, Andrea Galley shares her journey with body image and nipple tassels. Please share the Facing Cancer Together podcast with anyone in your life facing a cancer diagnosis or caring for someone who is. And if you're interested in learning more about Look Good, Feel Better and our workshops, visit us at lgfb.ca.
This is Story Studio Network.